Morning beekeepers, we are going to take this pile of rough cut scrap repurposed lumber. We're going to turn it into the extreme climate long Langstroth hive. So let's get started. Step one, cut everything to length. Alright, so we've turned a big pile of lumber into a smaller pile of lumber, and what we've got are 8 pieces that are 48 inches long. So for those of you keeping track at home, that's 4 2x6s. And then we've got 4 pieces that are 45 inches long, so that's 2 2x6s. And then we've got 4 pieces that are 21 inch long, so that's about 1 2x6. So now we're going to make the ends, and what we do is we just edge join these boards with any means you have. I use this little Craig jig. That allows me to drill a couple of holes in here, glue them and screw them, and that'll hold plenty good. Now, Craig tells you that you need to clamp this down. You don't need to, you just hold it down, and I'll show you that here in a second. And then you lay down a strip of glue. Normally I use Titebond 3, but our entire city is out of Titebond 3, so this Gorilla Wood Glue Ultimate, you want something that is moisture proof, durable, like that. So lay down a strip and then screw them together, and that's how you join all the pieces together. Alright, and then I flip them over and put one screw in the other side. So I've got 3 screws holding it, 2 on one side and 1 on the other. And that's how I edge join them. If you have fancy machinery, you can do it. Otherwise, if you don't even have the Craig drill, you can just pre-drill a hole at an angle and then just sink a screw in there. Alright, and then that's what it looks like with the bottom boards all kind of glued and screwed together. And then to give you an idea, the end plates are going to sit on there like that. But we've got to finish the top and the sides, so I'm going to work on the sides first. And that's actually the hardest part of the whole hive, is building the sides, so I'll show you that next. Okay, here comes the hard part. We've got to cut one of these boards and make a couple notches in it to hold the frames. So what we're going to do is we're going to set the blade height to 2 inches in the highest part, and then from the fence to the outer edge of the blade needs to be 7/16. So we're going to set the blade, and then we're going to run the one piece of wood through there and make a cut. Alright, we make that same cut on 2 separate boards, and then we set up for our next cut. Okay, and to set up for that next cut, we're going to go 15/16 to the outer edge, 15/16, and then what we're going to do is go 1 1/4 high to the highest peak of the blade there. And we're going to make another cut. Now that we've got those grooves cut, what we're going to do is cut off the excess pieces here to make our indentions. So our first cut here is 2 to the outer edge by 7/16 high, and that'll cut off the first layer. Alright, and that gets us our first little notch, and then we're going to set the saw and cut this piece off to get our second little notch. Okay, and to make this next cut, what we want to do is set it to about 1 1/8 to the outside of the blade, and then 15/16 or 1 inch high, and that'll make that piece here get cut off. Alright, now we've got the sides cut. That's the hardest and most precise part of the whole build, so congratulations, now it's all downhill. And then you assemble the sides just like you do all the rest of them. You just join those together on the ends, and then we can start assembling the hive. Alright, we can start to get a feel for what that's going to look like once the sides are assembled. That's kind of how they're supposed to sit in there. So what we're going to do is put on one end and then attach the sides. All right, so when we attach this end, I just set it on a bucket over there so it's level, 11-inch bucket. And then make sure you pre-drill the holes so you don't split out the 2x6s here, because you're drilling a screw through the end there. So pre-drill those holes and then attach the end. Okay, now with that side in, what we're going to do is we're going to work our way down. We're going to put in the long sides and screw those in. Now when we attach the end, we want to make sure that we pre-drill the holes again, so we're not splitting out our wood when we're sinking these screws in. It doesn't take a lot of screws because we're going to have some on the bottom as well. And when it's time to put the second side in, what we want to do is we want to make sure you get a frame and make sure everything's fitting the way it should. You can cheat this side in or out. Make sure that these things are lined up just right, and it looks like it's pretty good. So I'm going to put the holes in here and screw that together. Okay, now what I do is I stand it up on end and then just put a screw to hold the side in place, and the same with the other side. And then I take my frame, and what I'll do is I'll make sure it fits perfectly the entire length of the hive. And so that way I know if I have to push the side out or push the side in, but it looks like it fits pretty good, so I can just screw the sides in place now. Now these screws on the bottom, you don't have to pre-drill them. You can if you want, but the wood won't split when you're drilling these things in. And again, these holes on the end for the end cap, we want to pre-drill those so the wood doesn't split on us. And the same thing with these holes here, we want to pre-drill them so the wood doesn't split. Alright, and then the box is done, everything fits, and we're ready to move on to the roof door combination. Alright, once the box is done, you're going to make a lid, and that's done the same as the bottom. You take the 48-inch pieces of 2x6 and you edge glue them and screw them together, and that will be your top, believe it or not. Okay, when you're getting ready for paint, all I do is I do a light sanding. This is rough cut lumber. If you're using new lumber, you don't need to sand it because it's a beehive, but what you're looking for are cracks and gaps, and so there's a difference here. Like this is just a little crack, and this is just a little tiny crack on the inside. It's a bigger crack on the outside. The bees can't see through there. But then on this side over here, I had a gap that was big enough, just big enough for a bee to squeeze through, so I put some construction adhesive in there to fill that in. And then where there's those little notches that get drilled out with the Craig bit, I fill those in with construction adhesive, and that's just to keep the water out. So these up here haven't been done. You obviously do that after you sand the side. So you sand it down, put the construction adhesive in there. They have also plugs that you can buy to put in there, but it's a beehive, not a rocket ship, so you adjust. So like over here, you know, there aren't any cracks big enough for a bee to get through. So any little openings, they'll just put propolis on, like here in the corner, they'll just put propolis on that, and that'll seal up with the normal bee activity, so you don't have to worry about that stuff. So get it sanded and seal any big cracks, and then we're ready for paint. Okay, and then it's all painted and ready for final assembly. Alright, once the paint dries, you can put the hinges on and do the final assembly here. So I've got 4 of these T-strap hinges on there, and they just help carry the load. And then we'll put the legs on and show you how this all fits together. Alright, next you put the legs on, and this leg is attached parallel to the back. This is the top. It opens. It's attached parallel, and it's 48 inches, so you cut 8-foot treated 2x4 in half and attach it. And these screws along the bottom are there because we've got these individual boards, and if you put screws in, 4 screws in there, it helps keep them from bowing or bending or anything like that. Kind of secures them. So that's one leg, and then you do the same thing on the other side, and you're set. Now we make the other set of legs. Alright, and the second leg is cut to about 40 inches at a 45-degree angle. It goes on like that. And then we're going to make a little cross brace to go in here on each side as well, with the leftovers from that we cut off. So we'll have just enough to make that. Alright, once you get that cross brace in, your legs are done. And I used the fancy Craig screws again, but obviously you could just nail something right across here. You don't have to get fancy. I just use that off-fall, and then once this treated lumber dries out, we'll come back and hit it with paint. Okay, on the lid, I decided to put a 2x4 along the edge here because that gives me more strength this way. These are just edge screwed together, so there was a little bit of ability to bow on that, and I didn't like that. Obviously, the top isn't critical to this. You could just use plywood if you wanted, but whatever you want to do, I just put this on here to give it a little more rigidity and to finish off this edge a little bit better. So I'll sand that off and finish painting those as well. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put a stop on the top so that when you open the top up, it has something to stop. And it's just a little scrap of 2x4 with a 45-degree angle. And you can put it on the top itself, or because I've got this 2x4 out here, I can put it here. And it'll spin around and keep the top open at just the right angle. So I'll put that on there now and show you how that works. Okay, and then when that's on, it looks a little bit like a chimney. And when it opens, that holds the roof up right where it's supposed to be. Simple, easy solution. Now we got a few more things to work on. Alright, now we're going to make the covers. And that's just 1x4s cut to length, and I think it's about 20 1/4 or something like that. And then you'll have a little bit left over on the end, so you'll need like 1x2, or you can take a 1x4 and cut it to length, plus a little bit more, so just a little bit extra. You have like 2 inches or 2.5 inches, so if you have an extra 1x4, just cut it. I didn't have an extra 1x4, so I just cut up a 1x2. Anyway, so that's what you start with, and then we're going to add some handles to these, so I'll do that now. Okay, and the handles are just little pieces of strap, 1-inch strap you can get from the hardware store, and we're going to staple these to the boards. I'll show you what that looks like when I get them all stapled on there. Okay, and that's what they look like when you get those straps on. I use 2 straps because it's easier to control the board when you're pulling it up with 2 hands rather than just 1 strap. And then on one of these, we're going to drill a hole and mount this bee escape so that the bees can get, you know, when you close the lid, if there's some bees trapped in there, they can get back into the hive. So we'll do that. And then all these loose ends, this is the easiest thing in the world. You just take a torch and turn it on here, and hopefully there's some propane in there. And we'll just go like that, and it'll shrink right up on you. That's like the easiest thing you'll ever do. And you're all done. And then you don't have any loose ends, they're not going to fray on you. And they're just held in with 2 staples, and believe me, that's plenty strong enough to lift up a board. In fact, it's really hard to get those staples out. I use 3/4 inch crown staples, and I put them in at an angle so that they're not sticking out the bottom of the board, and they're held in there at an angle, so it's hard for them to come out. So then I'll put this bee escape in, and we're almost done. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to actually cut some slots into the ends, into one end of our cover boards, and they're just going to be the width of a saw blade. And so if you set it so the saw blade is sawing at 7/8, what you'll get is a slot that's equal distance all the way across. So you cut one like this and one like that, and then you have slots equal distance, and that serves for ventilation purposes, and I'll show you that in a second. Alright, when you get all done, you have these small vent slots all the way evenly spaced along the top of your hive, so that excess moisture and heat, especially on super hot days or when it's super cold, the moisture can come out and then condense out here instead of dripping back into the hive. So that's a neat little trick. And if the bees don't want these, they'll fill them up with propolis, so they control their own air conditioning and venting that way. And finally, it's time for the entrances. So I bet you were wondering about that. What I'm going to do is drill holes with the drill here, and then I'm going to drill a 5/8 inch hole on top of that. So we'll have sets of 3 holes, 3 holes, and 3 holes. And those that aren't in use will cork. But I'll show you how I'm going to drill these. I'm going to drill them down at an angle out like this. And that makes it easy for the bees to get rid of dead bees and things to just kind of get out of the hive. So that's the goal here, is to just kind of make it right at the bottom and kind of at an angle out. And now that I've got my 3 holes kind of started, stick the paddle bit in there. And get it started on this side, and then we'll drill through from the bottom. And here are the holes on the bottom, so we'll just drill up through and into the hive. And then when you get them drilled, that's what they look like. And we'll put a tiny little landing board under here. Okay, and then I just staple little unfinished blocks there, and that's all they need for an entrance or landing board. Alright, and then any entrance holes you're not going to use, you just plug with rubber stoppers and give the bees just enough room to operate. Okay, now I'm going to build the follower board out of some scraps that are left over from the covers, and basically just clamp them together, glue them, and secure them. So I'll show you that. Okay, and then here's what I did for the follower board. Just glued those 3 pieces of scrap together, and then I needed one more little piece here, and then a couple of vertical braces. So then you take a little 1x piece and you put it down here to fill the gap there. And then one of the challenges with any horizontal Langstroth is the follower board, making it tight so that the bees can't get through, because it's not like a Kenyan top bar where the sides are angled and it kind of slides in and tightens up as it gets down there. So what I do is I make this extra little piece here, and it's just a couple pieces of wood put together. And what that does is allows you to slide that in like that, and then in here between these 2 pieces you put you put a spacer like that. In between these 2 pieces you put a spacer, and then what you can do is you can add more spacers or different spacers to keep that relatively tight. And I'll show you what that looks like when I got it all set up here. Okay, so then with that little spacer in there, this is what it looks like on this side. So you have the frame butted up against there, and you can see that absorbs any little imperfections in the hive or differences in the sides. So then you can slide that up against there, and you've got a nice follower board. And when you need to move it, you just take the spacer out, take this out, and it's really easy to move that follower board then without worrying about whether it's perfect. So that's the follower board, and then we're almost done. So these slots are going to vent air out, hot air, and we need roof ventilation. So I'm just going to drill a couple of holes, and then we'll put some PVC angles in there, and that'll be our roof ventilation. Alright, and then what you're going to do is you're going to take these threaded right elbows, and this is 1 inch. And you drill just a hole in there, and those threads, it fits reasonably loose, but the threads help it grab. And there you go. You have 3 vents at the top that rain can't get in, but hot air can kind of sneak out of there. And we don't want breezes going in there. We just want the hottest of the hot air to kind of find a way out. Okay, now I'm going to add something to the hive to seal up that crack where it hinges open. And after the heavy rains, I just wanted to do that. So I've got a 2-inch strap. This is vinyl strap. So vinyl is plastic, basically. And I'm actually going to hit it with this camp dry, or you can use Scotch Guard or whatever, just because this is still breathable. But if I hit it with that camp dry, it'll seal it up pretty good. And that's just to help the water shed off there a little bit. Not a lot of water went in there, but this is just a little extra to keep it a little extra dry. So we'll get this sprayed up, and then we'll go add it to the hive. And that's all sprayed and ready to go. We'll add it to the hive. I'm going to let it cure here for a day before I add it to the hive. And there are better options than what I've got here. If you have a rubber strip that's that wide, or some kind of weather stripping, that would obviously be better, but this is what I've got, and this is what our town has to offer, so this is what I'm using. Okay, now we just staple that strip along the top there, and it'll cover the seam. I recommend doing that before you have bees, because bees respond to noise and vibration, so stapling that on an active hive is pretty stupid, but that's what I'm going to do. Alright, and that's what it looks like when it's stapled on. And then it just opens up like that. And provides a little bit of coverage. Works good. And then the last thing I did is I put a little bead of silicone, just because I had some. I put a little bead of silicone right along that edge there, so that it won't, water won't be able to get down underneath the strap there. This is all stuff you really don't need to do. It's just excess, and I just decided to do it because I had the stuff and I'm trying it out. So that's about it, and the hive is ready to go, and the bees are happy in there. Alright, and just like that, you've completed an extreme climate long Langstroth hive. Well, actually I have, but now you have the information to build one on your own. Or you can take a long Langstroth that you have and convert it into an extreme climate, tilt it up, give it different legs, that kind of thing. If you do have problems or questions, you can find me in a number of beekeeping groups out there on Facebook. Dwayne Parkinson, Beekeeper Builder Corner, Long Langstroth, Beekeeping Techniques, Beekeeping Basics, a couple of others. Anyway, I also have my own Parkinson Hive Facebook group, which you are welcome to join. And I post videos out here about experimental hives and stuff that I'm tinkering with and doing. So if you like that kind of thing, then hit the little subscribe button and you'll see how my bees are doing and things that I'm working on, changes that I'm making to the hives and fun stuff like that. So we'll see you around, and happy building.